thing, and I'm jumping straight into this fellow. He got a picture mentioned yesterday?
Absolutely, we talked about Edwards Deming, yes.
Yeah. There's a whole lot of stuff that you'll see on LinkedIn about Deming. Some of it is absolutely true, and some of it is on somebody's wish list. It's the unfortunate thing that I'm being very cynical now, that if you promote a particular guru, maybe you go up on his bootstraps. And I have always said, bearing in mind that I worked with Juran for 10 years and I also worked with Ishikawa, I've always said, when this sort of stuff about which is the best guru, which is the #1 guru, I've always said, read the stuff of all of the gurus and you will find stuff, they wouldn't be gurus if they haven't come out with something that was worth listening to. Listen to all of them, pick out the stuff that you think is important, that impresses you and it's useful to you, and make a composite of all of that, what you think TQ is all about. If you just follow one of them, by definition you're going to miss out on all the rest of it. Or you think it's a threat, or that they're in competition with each other. And they're not in competition with each other. They all bring something to the party, and he did. Unfortunately, there's stuff accredited to him which actually isn't true. And it's sad, because if you watch if you look at the red bead experiment, which I'm hoping we'll get to quickly, you will see that he was actually quite a guy. Anyway, he wrote a book called he wrote a book called Out of the Crisis, which he wrote in, I've forgotten the actual date, it must have been about 81 or so, or 82. But up until then, virtually nobody in the West had even heard of him, apart from his students and a few other people. And suddenly he's catapulted into the limelight because of this TV film, hour and 45 minutes, but only the last little bit is about him. But it was on the question of, if Japan can, why can't we? That was the name of it. I've got a copy of it at home. It's been copied 2 or 3 times before I got it, so it's not in brilliant shape, but you can make a sense of it. And so he then became catapulted into, well, if he did that in Japan, why can't he do it in the States, and why can't American people copy it? He died aged 94 and was still working on the day he died. He was having blood transfusions in the morning and doing lectures in the afternoon. Amazing. And he created what's called the Deming's 14 points. I'm just going to quickly whip you through them before we get to this bead experiment. I'm not going to hang around on them because you can read them yourself, because they're in the notes you've just been given. How do I get to 6? Oh, that's it. Right. If you think about each one of these, and because there's 14, I could spend quite a long time, but I'm not going to. Constancy of purpose towards improvement of product. A lot of companies, we had an expression for years in the West, in the UK, called bohica, bend over, here it comes again. Because companies got so sick of all these different initiatives. People like John and me and probably Stefan and that coming in and saying, this is the best thing since sliced bread. And this is the one, all you do is sprinkle some magic dust and all this wonderful stuff's going to happen. The company does it for a few months and then some other consultant goes in who says, no, try this. Right. Yeah, and people just got sickened it. And he says, look, make up your mind what you're going to do, stick with it and do it, and that makes sense. Adopt the new philosophy. You know, we had this discussion earlier on about, is it a cultural thing? And I said, you create your own culture. Forget what goes on outside. This is your business, it's your thing, you're employing your people. You want them to go home at night with a buzz and talking about what a great day they had at work, and looking forward to going back the next day. Do you have Fridays as your holiday?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Fridays and Saturdays.
Fridays and Saturdays.
Yeah.
So the people on a Saturday night think, oh, got its work again tomorrow.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, wouldn't it be nice if they thought, oh, good, it's Sunday tomorrow? Is that a nice thing to have?
Yes.
So adopt that philosophy. We can do it. We can make it like that. Cease dependency on inspection to achieve. We talked about that earlier, didn't we?
We talked about that yesterday. Cease dependence on inspection.
And then we talked about Jidoka this morning.
Yeah.
You know, something goes wrong, deal with it now. Trap it. Deal with it. End the practice of awarding business on the basis of price tag. Don't just go to the cheapest one. Unfortunately, accountants quite often make the decisions and they know the cost of everything and the value of nothing. You know, what is this worth to me? Improve constantly. Well, doesn't that Hoshin give you the opportunity to do that? You can keep on pushing the sites up and sites up.
Running the relationship with the supplier is
Sorry, did I miss one?
fourth point.
Which one?
Move towards a
Oh,
single
yeah.
supplier.
Yeah.
I mean, is this really applicable? Because even if it
Sometimes and sometimes not.
relationship with him,
Yeah.
tomorrow he might change the
I know.
price.
But in the process of you deciding whether to use him, you will look into all of that. Yeah, you've got to look at their economy. I mean, is it financially risky for us to put all our business with that guy and he goes bankrupt or has an explosion or terrorist action or something? It's all part of the decision-making process. Price is one factor, but it's not the only one.
And a long-term relationship of loyalty and trust, if that can be achieved, it's such a powerful partnership. It's the partnership arrangement, isn't it?
See, in Toyota, they call their supply chain the Toyota family. And
if it can be achieved, it's a powerful thing.
I mean, none of these things you can't sort of go to some perfection thing.
Right. It's a spectrum, isn't it?
Yes,
a spectrum of
yes.
All right.
Yeah. But it's having that thought in mind.
Yes. If
How can we head in that direction? Because if you think about it, if you're awarding, supposing we're 3 possible suppliers to you, and you ask him to quote, ask Stefan to quote, ask me to quote, and we quote, and it just so happens that John's quote's lower than our 2, you say, well, we're going with him, he's the lowest quote.
Yeah.
How do you know he's the best? He might be. But you don't know that. You don't know what his long term is, you don't know his psychology, you don't know anything other than what you saw on a piece of paper, and that's it. And yet, it might be better to use, maybe the other one costs more because they understand the process more and they've got more idea of what is required to actually achieve it. Do we know that? Well, you have to go and have a look at them, go and see how they do things, talk to them, see what their mentality is. Have they got Hoshin or anything like it, or even know what
For
it
us,
is?
how it works, I mean,
Yeah.
for suppliers, they invite a number of suppliers.
Yeah.
They are critically analyzed, investigated, and so they can tell, the company or the institution can tell the level of each one of these suppliers. So whenever there is like a project and they need them to supply them, they are all invited to court. Okay, now we know that these are good suppliers, all of them.
Well, that's
so there's no questioning about
well, that's you're sort of following
but
that
it's
to
not
some
a
extent.
single supply, it has to be multiple.
No, it doesn't mean to say you've always got, 1 as the magic number.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
So single doesn't mean one.
if you look at no, well, move towards, it says.
move towards. Yeah, no.
Move towards.
Yeah.
So,
another way
towards
of-
means you can have 5 suppliers,
Yeah.
but at some point you might want to consider having only one.
Yeah. And-
But you can go from
go on.
from 5 to 4, then to 3. Then you say, okay, I'm good with 3 for a couple of years, but I'm still thinking at some point maybe I could go to one supplier.
Yeah.
That sort of concept has been lost in the last few years, hasn't it?
Yeah.
It's been lost in our society. Like, we go for the cheapest, quickest. Like, there's no loyalty.
Even in Japan, the word loyalty now
let me give you an
fading
example.
out.
Yeah.
Let me give you an example of why that is a good goal.
Right.
Way back, it was the first time I ever went to Japan, and during the trip, I went to Nissan, we went to Honda, we went to Toyota. This happened to be in a Toyota plant, and Nagoya. And you go in, and there's a mezzanine platform above production, so you don't interfere with production, you're looking down on production. And so you can see just in time where there's forklift trucks, there's the production line here, there's forklift trucks zooming up and down, and at this particular point, the guy was picking up a fuel pipe, taking it and putting it into the vehicle that had just come along to where he was, screwed it in at the front, screwed it in at the back, just finished that, it moved on to the next guy who did what he did. It's like watching a ballet, the whole thing is like that. Then you notice he's only got in his little rack with these fuel pipes, there's only about 3 or 4 or 5 of them in there. And every now and again, the forklift truck just puts 3 or 4 or 5 more in there and zooms off and gives other people other things all the way along the production. So this is like just in time and so on. And then eventually we got to a point where as a car came along, hasn't got an engine in it yet, and a truck backed up to the track, an open back truck full of engines, came in through the doors of the thing, came up to the track, and as it got to the track, the car arrived, 4 guys appeared, slung up the engine in the corner, swung it round, dropped it in, started screwing it in. It now moves on to the next workstation. And then the slings then put on the next one, the next vehicle's there and so on. Then we noticed, for the first time I'd noticed it, that there were, the next car came along was different from the one that has just gone. And then I looked at the engines in the back of the truck, and the engines are all different, one from the other. So nobody said anything, and this is amazing. There were 5 different vehicles, all mixed up, made on the same track. This is 1980, by the way.
1980.
Yeah. And different vehicles on the same track, and the engines are in the same sequence. So I thought, that engine supplier, or there must be a store somewhere with massive piles of engines in, and they select the ones that they want at the point of use. The next day we went to engine manufacturer. They were manufacturing them in the same sequence that Toyota were going to use them. No finished good stocks. They came off the last operation in the engine factory. They went through a routine that started them up to check the timing and everything like that was okay. They were then into the truck and off to Toyota, like about quarter of an hour, half an hour later, we're actually in a vehicle from the end of the production line. 2 or 3 days later, we went to NGK spark plugs.
Spark plugs.
Now this is spark plugs. The porcelain powder is in big vat at the end of the production line. The pipe goes from that. It went in, it was sprayed into a mould in which was the spindle down the middle of the spark plug. As that came out of there, it went into a tunnel fill kiln, straight through, out the other end of the tunnel kiln, went through a cooling thing, and then the little bits were screwed on the end, and they ended up in a little packet the size of a spark plug. When you got a number of those, they went into the back of a truck. When the truck was full, it went off to Toyota or to Nissan or wherever, because they made for more than one. But nobody else has got a system like that. They were buying all their spark plugs from NGK. So there are cases where you can't achieve just in time at that degree of complexity without ending up with that. Now, a few weeks earlier, I'd been to Champion Spark Plugs up near Liverpool in the UK, over near Liverpool, and the factory was about 5 times the size of NGK, with vats and vats and vats of spark plugs for just about every car that's ever been on the planet, and most of them will probably never ever get called for. I mean, the difference was so stark in the two things.
How can you apply that in your world, in your business? What sort of suppliers are you using, and can you get that sort of service from them where they're going to be specifically producing just for you, and you get much better quality, better timing, lower costs? Does that happen?
No, actually I understand the concept of Toyota, and I've been there. We went to South Korea and we visited the Hyundai manufacturing.
All right, yeah.
And
I've
it's
never been
completely
there.
different from Toyota's.
It is different?
Yes, yes.
Uh-huh.
Because in Hyundai, the production line is the same car.
Oh,
Like
yeah,
they
yeah,
have,
yeah.
for example, I don't know, accent.
Yeah. It's all accents.
It's all accent.
Yeah.
And they know they're working on that. But in Toyota, it's as you described.
Yeah.
It's different cars on the same line.
Yeah.
And
Now
Nissan.
you will see a Cressida,
Nissan.
and then comes
Yeah.
in Corolla.
And you see with SMED, single minute exchange of dies, you can do that.
Yeah.
Because it's in Toyota, in the most graphic example of it I saw was in a Honda plant where they make CUVs and SUVs on the same track. And standing there, body in white, which is the front end where all the spark plug things are, I was watching that. It did all this on the vehicle coming through. As that vehicle moved out of that cage, the lid of the cage opened up like that. All of this stuff went up in the air and disappeared, and replaced by other ones for the next vehicle coming along, which was a CUV instead of an SUV. And then, and there was no interference in production.
Yeah.
The thing didn't even stop.
Yeah. But I've told even John about this, in that Toyota, they are producing per order. They don't stock anything at these days, do you know that?
No.
They don't have stocks.
Yeah.
You place an order now, they start production.
Yeah. Your car's on a production
so it
line
works for
somewhere.
them to have a unified supplier, a single supplier.
Yeah.
But when it comes to something like you're going to make an order today, and then it's okay if you get it by within 3 months period, you know.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
something high.
in
As long
Iran-
as it's quality.
There's a company, I'm sure, trouble
Wait,
is I don't
wait.
spend any headache.
Yeah.
There's a company in Iran called Iran Quattro, which make 1 million cars a year.
Yeah.
But they make them out of Peugeot kits. They've got 5 years stock of Peugeot kits in their incoming stock. And it takes, if you order a car in Iran, it takes you 5 years before they deliver it to you.
Oh my
And
God.
you have to pay for it when you order it. So there's no pressure on the manufacturer to reduce that 5 years because they've got your money in their bank.
It's already in place.
It's a different system. Anyway, back to this.
Move on. Yeah.
Institute leadership, aim of supervision, help people and machines. I think we all get that one. Drive out fear. Juran's got a lovely example of that in one of his videos, where people were so scared of having scrap seen around their machine, they never made any scrap, or so it appeared, until they had a terrible drought. And out the back of the factory there was a canal, and when the water level went down in the canal. So if people are afraid, they will hide their defects. So then they are always going to be there, you know. Yeah. Break down barriers between departments. Well, we talked a lot about that this morning. Eliminate slogans, exhortations and targets. Because if you think about it, telling people to do a better job is a kind of an insult. Because they say, oh, I'm doing the best I can anyway with what you give me and the training I've had. You know, if you want me to do something different, tell me how to do it. And setting targets and goals is only going to increase stress if you don't tell them what to do different from what I'm doing now. Does that make sense?
Can you elaborate on that? Because people have this general assumption that with a
the big
KPI.
experiment brings that out.
Yeah. But people generally associate their KPI with a target. Management like to set a target. And I think a lot of people have a hard time with that particular. They can't see how can we improve if we don't have an idea of a future state.
I'm going to jump to the third session. How many of you have heard of PDCA?
Yeah.
PDCA.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Plan. I'll go into this in some detail later on anyway. Check. Act. Now, one way of looking at PDCA, there's several as you'll see. So, I've got this is an employee. I've hired this guy and I've told him what his job is. Okay?
Yep.
So that, if you like, is the plan. I then tell him to go and get on and do it. So he goes on and he does what he does. And he keeps doing it indefinitely. Somewhere downstream from him, there's an inspector who checks his work and finds defectives and deficiencies and things like this, you know, in whatever way there is. But that information doesn't get fed back to him. Not directly. So someone has to act on it, but it's not this guy, it's someone else. So you have an open loop system. And if you've got an open loop system, and that is not all under the control, well, he can't control that, but if he's not participated in agreeing on that and understanding exactly what it is, if he hasn't got the rest of that, then it's open loop, which means that the management job is incomplete, because the manager's job is to complete that loop so that people not only know what they're supposed to be doing, they have the tools to do good work, and if they get something less than good work, they've got to have the means of correction. If any of that is missing, then it's a management solvable problem, not a worker solvable problem, and just blaming the worker isn't going to solve anything.
So the key word in point 10 is targets for the worker. It doesn't mean we don't have targets for the management.
No, that's right. Yeah.
That's the subtle difference.
Are you happy with that?
You can have a target for the management and the company target, but then to give the worker on a daily basis or an hourly basis a target is not gonna motivate them anymore. It's just gonna make them more stressed and fearful. They're going to work according to the ability of the process that you provide for them to do the work. They work at the rate of the process. The process is designed to give them a certain throughput. Am I correct, David?
Yes.
But you don't motivate them with a target. You motivate them by making the process easy for them, easier, and mistake-proof it for them, etc.
And to give them the opportunity to participate in checking and taking action.
Yes, and
to
give
make
them
it work solvable or work
allow them to suggest improvements to make it better.
That's what Japan does.
And that's in those slides, by the way. We just haven't got the...
Yes.
It's coming up next. I've just seen on the slide coming up. So, the next one, eliminate work standards on the factory floor. This is one that fits in very much with what we just talked about, and it you know, it is this thing of just telling people what you want, but not giving them any means of actually doing something about it.
Again, I think, David, there's nothing wrong with management having objectives.
No.
Right, so Peter Drucker, management by objectives, right? That's not all thrown out the window.
No.
It's just that getting the worker to behave in that way is what is dangerous.
But I think if you institute Hoshikari, you end up with all of this anyway.
Yeah.
So remove barriers that rob the hourly paid of his right to pride in his workmanship, which means you've got to concentrate on how do we build that in. Well, I think that fits with what we've said all day and probably yesterday as well. And put everyone in the company to work to accomplish the transformation. is everybody's job. Now this thing about quality is everybody's job, we'll look at again in a bit, but that was originally a phrase that was coined by another American named Feigenbaum, Armand Feigenbaum. And
who you've worked with as well, I believe.
I haven't really worked, well, I've been in the same place as him lots of times, and he and I dressed up and did something daft at a dinner one night. But
oh, you were at the dinner with him, yeah.
Yeah, it was one of the EOQ dinners.
Proponent of this.
Was it cheap to go on dinner with him?
Yeah, well, it was the EOQ annual conference when it happened to be in Budapest that year, and the heads of the organisation in Hungary that organised it came on wearing some big red cloaks, and somehow or other Feigenbaum and I managed to get a couple of these on, and he and I did a silly song and dance act with them.
You haven't got it on video, though.
I was on the same table. Yeah. I've got photographs of it, but not a video. Yeah. Yeah, I was at the same table with him.
I mean, that is the name that's synonymous with total quality management. He coined the phrase up.
Yeah,
right.
He came out with this idea in his book, which was published in 1961, called Total Quality Control. It's still available, but he was saying it in papers in the 50s, so it went into his book in 61. But his argument was that because quality is everybody's job, unless you organise it, it becomes nobody's job. That was actually the words he used. And then he suggested, and this is where there was a parting of the ways between Japan and the West, because Feigenbaum said, therefore, you need to have a quality control organisation to support that. But actually what he was saying was that quality control should be supporting the activities of the people, not doing it for them or being like a police force or anything like that. Yeah. Unfortunately, it became a police force. In Japan, Ishikawa took it absolutely literally, and in Japan they do not have quality departments as such. Everyone from the chief executive downwards is taught everything that the person who knows most about quality in organisations is the chief executive officer, the CEO. And if you're in Japan and you go for the Deming Prize, which is their national quality award, we've got in Europe the European Federation for Quality. It's not a federation, is it? For EFQM.
European Quality Management.
Yeah, that's it. And in the States, they've got the Baldrige Award. In both the EFQM and in the Baldrige Award, a team will come in and evaluate you against a model. And you either fit the criteria of the model or you don't, and you get up to 1,000 points depending on how well you fit this model.
You as a person or
as an organisation?
Organisation.
Yeah, the organisation. They don't do it like that in Japan with the Deming Prize. With the Deming Prize, the team will go in, they're not interested in models. They do have a model, but they don't actually use it in the Deming Award. What happens is the team will go in and they will interview every one of the directors of the company separately from each other. And they're looking for how well they actually understand the sort of principles we've been talking about today, and this stuff and everything like that. Once they've convinced themselves that these guys know what they're talking about, and if they're not convinced, then they don't go any further, they then go drill down through the organisation, picking people at all levels, all the way down, to get confirmation that what the guys at the top said is actually happening for real. And if it is, and it all fits together, then they might win the Deming Prize. It's not based on whether they fit a model or not, it's whether they fit what these guys have perceived quality is all about. And of course the model behind it, but they don't use, is Hoshinkanri, and you can't actually paint by numbers on ticking that, because as soon as you do what's on there, it's different, it's yours. It's got your own stuff in it. Yeah. And that's what makes it different. Now they're using that in India. Tata Steel, they won the international Deming Prize Award, and they have Japanese consultants in there all the time. Florida Power and Light in the States won it. I was actually at the ceremony when they won it back in the early 80s. That was a few years after they had what happened at Chernobyl, but not quite to the same extent. And they desperately wanted to kill that reputation and get a good one. And they decided to hire some Japanese people to go in and work with the top management to create that. And they actually got the very first International Deming Prize.
Florida Power Light.
That's what led to the Baldridge Award, because the Americans were so acutely embarrassed that the only award in the world was a foreign one. They had to have one of their own.
Actually, we have a similar method in Oman, the Japanese style.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Do you still have? You said you
about an academic institution.
Has it gone now?
Because the quality buddy there visits, we call it an external audit.
Right.
They come to the institution and they go through the institution, meeting different people from all different levels, and they question them separately,
right,
to see if they are applying the standards of the quality body or not.
Good.
Yeah, of course. They have the model, however, they don't look for the model, they look of how much you understand about that. Yeah, the application of it.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
That is good. You can never, all over the world, there's bits of this here and bits of that there and bits of that somewhere else. It's dangerous to generalise and say, the West is this and the East is that, because even here in this country, there's some companies that have got Hoshit. And the aircraft company that I referred to earlier on when I was doing those graphics, that company, they were actually owned by the British government when I first started working with them, during the time when we had a Prime Minister named Margaret Thatcher, who you've probably heard of. You may have, I don't know, but anyway. She was the Iron Lady, and she sent a letter out to all of the state-owned factories who were losing money, and said that unless you clean up your act and find someone to buy the company, we're going to close you down anyway. And they were referred to as lame ducks. And this company was one of those companies, and they'd made a loss for 15 years. And I'm talking about millions of pounds a year. And she said it's not fair on the taxpayer that you keep on funding this company. Fortunately, the chief executive hired me, and I introduced Hoshit. And we had three lots of 3-day meetings with the top management, developing all of this stuff and everything. And once they then got started and started developing training improvement teams, the head of manufacture, they were making wings for the Boeing at the time, and also the Fokker 100. And it took 72,000 man-hours to build a pair of wings for the Fokker 100 aircraft. In 1 year, they got it down from 72,000 to 44,000. The next year from 44,000 to 24,000. The next year from 24,000 to 19,000. The story ends there because unfortunately in Holland, Fokker went bust. But during that period, that wasn't only on those wings, that was one set of statistics, but there were other things as well. When I first went there, they had 6,500 employees. When I left there, they had over 9,000 employees, because they had got so much new business as a consequence of their incredible improvement to their performance, that they actually were getting orders that they never would have expected normally, and they had to hire people during a recession we had. This is in the early 90s. We were having a recession in the UK. They were actually hiring labour, one of the few companies that did. If you need to see anything that actually justifies all of this.
And it dispels the myth that it's all about cutting heads.
Yeah, no, it can be the opposite.
Yeah.
When Toyota went to Detroit in 1950, they found out the Americans could build a car with half the number of employees that it took Toyota. the team that went to Detroit from Toyota didn't know how the Americans did it. Well, I suppose they did, but that wasn't the point. They just cut the number of people in production by 50% and told the supervisors, now find out how to make a car with half as many people. They didn't sack the people they took off the line. They dispersed them into all sorts of other things, but they gave quite a lot of them a suit and a briefcase and told them to go out and sell cars.
Very good, very good.
But anyway, back to quickly here. A vigorous program of education and self-improvement. I mean, that is, you know, from what we've said this morning and what you've probably heard yesterday and you're going to hear the rest of the week, pretty obvious, isn't it? There's a lot of re-education needed if you're going to get this sort of stuff. You won't just go in there and sprinkle some magic dust and it happens on its own. You've got to change the way people see stuff. For everybody to work, to accomplish the transformation. So it becomes everybody's job, as we said.
I think that's a good, getting through those 14 points is a good break, I think,
yeah,
David.
It is, because what I'd like to do then is to do that if you want.
After lunch, yeah. After
but
lunch.
I mean, you want me to go into that because I think if you've got it down for later.
I'll do the PDCA. I've got a slide. I've got some slides about PDCA, so that then you can. I might save you some time. I don't know. Yeah, but I like some of the. I like what I'm seeing there, David. I like to. No, you go through that. Yeah, go through that after lunch.
Okay.
Yeah.
It won't take very long.
I like that. Yeah. I like that. Well, thank you. That again. Excellent session. Excellent session on the 14 principles. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
John,
Yes, sir.
we should take a picture with all the team before lunch.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Great. Thank you very much.
Member of staff, so everybody needs to be in it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
In the middle of it, she'll show.
Thanks. I'm gonna give you.